Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey podcast by the faithful and for the faithful. I'm David Staples of the Edmonton Journal, and I'm here today with Bruce McCurdy. Hey, Bruce.
Hey, David. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Good. It seems like it's been a while since we've done one of these. We normally were pumping them out 3 and 4 a week during the season, and this week I got busy with car purchase and stuff happened, and not a lot of news on the Oilers front, but we can certainly wrap up where things have gone in the last few days.
Not a lot of news and not even a lot of rumors, Bruce, about where the Oilers might be going here. Like in terms of, this Duncan Keith's been hanging on forever as an issue, but seems to be going nowhere fast, which is probably good news. I mean, one of the latest rumors was from Frank Saravalli, formerly of TSN. Who's he with now? Daily Faceoff?
Yes.
Is that it?
Yep.
That the Oilers have taken a couple pieces off the table in terms of their offer. And I don't know what that means. Who knows what that means? It's just like, was that just them rejecting? Was that actually them shrinking their offer? Or was that them just rejecting some of Chicago's outlandish asks in the trade? Who knows? But
maybe maybe they were reading the Cult of Hockey for the last week and seeing all the reasons that maybe it wasn't such a great idea why Edmonton should be paying assets to pick up the last tail end 2 years of a long-term contract, which is my beef with it. I think Duncan Keith, actually, I think he could help the team, but not at the kind of cost that we're hearing, and not at his cap hit.
I think you and I have both made that point rather strenuously, and you don't. Well, let's just finish. Let's just deal with Keith now, since we're into it. You just don't pay a player over market value in this current CBA reality with the flat cap. Why would you overpay for a player? Why would you pay $5.5 million to a player who, on an open market for the next 2 years, at most, Bruce, I'm going to go with like some crazy offer. At most would be $4 million. I don't think Duncan Keith's worth $4 million a year over the next 2 years, but who knows? Maybe there's some crazy team out there who would say, "Okay, Duncan Keith, we'll give you $4 million over 2." That would be the absolute. Like, I can't imagine it, Bruce, being more than that. And I think more realistically, the realistic range for Duncan Keith over the next 2 years, $1.5 million at the very lowest end. I don't think he would get $1 million. Like he get million. 1.5 million is the very lowest I'm thinking. So like the people who think he's washed up as a player, blah, blah, blah. The market, I think, would pay him at least $1.5 million a year over 2 years. And at the highest end, like the highest realistic end, I think we can go to like 3.5. So it's somewhere in there. 3. Yeah, 3 might be the highest reasonable end. But you never know. There might be some crazy team.
There might be some team.
So I agree. 3's a good number. I'll back you on that. In case you're listening to this, Bruce held up 3 fingers there. So all right. So yeah, Keith, he's worth at most $3 million over 2 years on the market. How are the Oilers getting into any discussion that they're going to have to add on stuff? Like, I could see, if you really want Keith, you'd take him at 3, and you could move Caleb Jones. I'm not going to squawk if that happens. People's mileage varies on Caleb Jones's worth as a player. If he was put on waivers, would he be taken by another team? I think so, yeah. There'd be someone who'd take Caleb Jones. But the fact that I think 100%. That's a fair question, I think it's a fair question, even if someone would take him. Like, he's not, like, I think there's a faction of Oiler fans who value Caleb Jones, I think, more than the NHL GMs would value the player. I'll put it that way, and I think that's a fair comment. But the idea that you would add in Dmitry Samorukov, for instance, I just think that's that is insanity. It's seriously, Bruce, it's a firing offense. If they were to do something like that, Jones and Samorukov for Keith, and very little retention of the contract, that would be madness. Yeah, that would be madness.
The other name that's come up is Ethan Bear
and Ryan McLeod
for Duncan Keith. I mean, come on.
Yeah, come on. Exactly. Come on. So Bear earns $2 million this year. He played at probably a very similar level to Duncan Keith this year, I'm guessing, like all things considered. He didn't always play tough minutes, Ethan Bear. He was up and down, inconsistent, leaked a few many chances, he had a down year in his second year in the NHL, I'm going to argue. But he wasn't playing top pairing minutes like Duncan Keith, but he had more points per 60 than Duncan Keith. So Elliot Friedman, Bruce, I'll just quickly say what Elliot Friedman said on Oilers Now, since Elliot's kind of plugged in and we're not, it looked like it might be down to one team in his mind, like this whole trade thing. And it's all apparently, rumor has it, contingent on him being able to visit his son. And so he might want to be in a Canadian team in case the borders get shut. And who knows? This is all speculation from insiders. But anyway, he wants to, seems firm, as far as that kind of information goes, firm enough. He wants to be in Edmonton because there's flights to the Okanagan from here. Easier flights that might be in jeopardy if there was another lockdown. So Friedman is saying the Oilers have essentially made their final offer, and they're just, like telling to Chicago to crap or get off the pot, essentially. Like, what are you going to do? You taking this or not? And it doesn't sound like it includes Ethan Bear or Ryan McLeod.
Better not.
Completely agree. And also Dmitry Samorukov, who I would argue is as valuable a piece as Ryan McLeod, I think. Like the way he played in the top Russian league.
But yeah.
I mean, he played great hockey in the top Russian league. He was one of, he was in one of the handful, I think, of, like, he was top 4 or top pairing and for Moscow, one of the best teams, and he had one of the best plus minuses. And when you watched him play, he was steady, he was effective, he was really good. He's a great big guy. I think he's 21 years old. Man, you do not move him for Duncan Keith. Like the notion that Chicago's valuation, maybe they were, of Duncan Keith seems like crazy talk to me. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, the point's been made. I mean, that Keith is on the tail end of his contract. So Chicago buying him out would only save very marginal dollars for Chicago because they're only buying out, getting a fraction of the actual money they want. If you want to save money by a buyout, here's a deal for you. You send the Oilers Duncan Keith, the Oilers send you James Neal. You can buy out James Neal and you can save $3.8 million off your cap the next 2 years. You really want to do it? There's your deal.
Bruce,
I don't think they're going to do it. I'm just saying that's the counter. That's the counter offer. You want to save cap room? That's how you can do it.
Well, that's the low ball. Like if you're low balling Chicago on the way back, that's what you're offering. I don't think
you're addressing their concern about the cap.
Because I think Duncan Keith has a chance to be a good, decent second pairing defenseman next year, Bruce. I don't think James Neal has an honestly decent chance to be a decent. So you're giving a player who could be a decent second pairing guy for a guy who really deserves to be bought out. And I don't, so what you get a better buyout proposition from it. I don't think that's much of a sweetener necessarily. I would love it if the Oilers could make that deal, but I think that's a very Oilers friendly deal. I'm thinking more like if they buy out half the contract, even 40%, like the last range we heard, it was from Brian Lawton that Chicago was thinking about a deal where he was suggesting at least that this might be in the cards. That Chicago, the closer you get to the expansion draft, the more desperate Chicago becomes to move this player. So they are willing to do a 30 to 50% retention on Keith's salary. Caleb Jones comes the other way. If that's the frame of the deal, Bruce, it's reasonable enough. And not having seen Duncan Keith, so I can't comment on in the moment of what his real value is fairly and accurately. I don't think that's fair for me. So it strikes me as reasonable that I'm not going to lose my mind and squawk and complain. If that was the deal, if that's the parameters of the deal, I know a lot of people will not be happy with that, but I will withhold judgment on it personally. What would your take be if that was the deal? 30 to 50% retention, Caleb Jones for Keith.
Well, it's a little more tolerable than taking 100% of Keith under any circumstances.
Yeah.
The Oilers have cap space, and the purpose of Oilers cap space isn't to create cap space for Chicago so they can sign Seth Jones.
It is not. As shocking as that may sound to some, I don't like to people who are defending the idea that the Oilers should trade Keith and take on his whole salary. And there's people doing that. Like I've heard that notion that that's in the cards.
Well,
Like
they call it the Windy City for a reason, maybe, because that's I think that kind of talk's coming out of Chicago.
City of Broad Shoulders. Who wrote that great poem on Chicago? I can't remember who it was. Let me see if I can find it. Chicago.
My kind of town, my kind of town.
Is that from the movie?
Chicago, Chicago. Yeah.
Anyway,
I'm just saying, if they're literally talking about buying out Duncan Keith, then we got a better buyout candidate that they can offer in exchange. You know, if you want to talk turkey, I don't know that they're going to buy out Keith, but I think they're trying to finesse him and trying to overvalue him and suck Edmonton into thinking this is a guy you just absolutely got to have, and you got to pay our price, and then maybe you better pay it a little bit more. Better buy those floor mats while you're at it. You know, I've just been buying cars, right? So
here it is, Bruce. Carl Sandburg. Carl Sandburg. I'll just give the first stanza of the poem. And the poem is called Chicago. It's a famous one. Hog butcher for the world, tool maker, stacker of wheat, player with railroads and the nation's freight handler, stormy, husky, brawling, city of the big shoulders.
Wow.
So that's what we're dealing with here. And it's time to take that city with the big shoulders and check them freaking hard into the boards and say, take it or leave it. You know, we're not taking on the whole contract.
Right.
We'll give you Jones and deal. That's the deal. Take it or leave it. See you later.
We're buying the tail of the long contract that you guys set up to your advantage. Why should we pay full freight for the tail?
Yeah, and otherwise, okay, figure it out. Take your big broad shoulders and go to the quiet room and figure it out. If you're not going to take this deal, you live with it. All right, we've dealt with that. So we're going to also talk about, Bruce, on this podcast, Tampa, buyouts for James Neal and Mikko Koskinen. Some of the discussion around that. Possibility for Zach Hyman, maybe Taylor Hall coming to Edmonton, Jayden Schwartz. We could throw that name in. There's a few other interesting names possibly. But we'll start with just saying adieu to a former Oilers coach and heck of a interesting NHL hockey player, Bugsy Watson. And he died today. My condolences to his family. He was an interesting hockey player, Bruce. He wasn't a big guy. Maybe just look it up here. He wasn't a big guy.
5'9", 175, maybe?
He was one of the toughest hockey players of the brawling era of the NHL, which is the 1970s. And he died today at 78. He's interesting in Oiler history because, what was it, 81 that he was named the coach?
81, yep.
Yeah.
Second year in the NHL.
He didn't last. He lasted, 17, 18 games, and he didn't win much, and Sather fired him and took over, and the rest is history.
4 wins, 9 losses, 5 ties. Remember those? So maybe if we were in the era of Bettman points, we'd have 2 or 3 extra overtime or shootout wins, and Watson would have been able to hang around. But he was.
It always comes back to that, doesn't it? Bruce?
Little guy, tons of character in the old sense of the word, and a very, very, very funny, personable guy. His face looked like he'd fallen off the turnip truck several times over and been dragged behind it for about 30 miles. As a player, most famously, he was the guy who was tasked with the assignment of shadowing Bobby Hull in the 1966 playoffs when he was with Detroit. And Bobby Hull was, of course, then the record goal scorer. He'd broken Rocket Richard's record with scoring over 50 goals in the season. And Watson, I think he held Hull to 2 goals in the series by absolutely the most nefarious tactics imaginable. He was just all over him. And he was greased him up. Hull even resorted to fighting with Watson at one point during the season, which wasn't generally Hull's normal style. But Watson was just so in his face for 60 minutes of every game in that series, and Detroit did pull off the upset and make it to the Stanley Cup Finals in '66. And Watson was part of the reason why they did. Think of him as a Claude Lemieux, but about 30 years earlier. I think he's that style of player. Maybe a little more willing to drop the gloves and go at it, but in terms of his, it's just kind of his in-your-facedness. He was
Kevin Bieksa.
Well, he was a cussed little guy and talk, right? And really drove his opponents around.
Was he a
bend.
defenseman at that time for Detroit?
He was both. He played right wing in that series because he matched up straight against Bobby Hull every shift.
Wow. So that Detroit team had a 37-year-old Gordie Howe and a 38-year-old Bill Gadsby. Talk about a team
trying to win his first cup, and he never got one. Bill Gadsby
bridged the eras, eh? So I'm going to give major credit to Bugsy Watson. He was a regular player on a original six team back when it was the original six. Absolutely. That's a hell of an achievement. You're a hell of a hockey player if you make the lineup of one of those original six teams in the 1960s or 50s, like whenever good for him. Like, heck of a player. He went on to play in total in the regular season, Bruce, 877 regular season hockey games in the NHL. So again, that's a remarkable achievement as a hockey player. His coaching record was less than stellar in Edmonton.
How many penalty minutes?
2,212 in 877 games. He topped out
a lot.
322 penalty minutes and 79 games for Detroit in 75-76. So,
that's a lot.
That's a lot. How old's Sather now, by the way? I wonder. He's
getting up there. Yeah, he was in 1964. He was 20, I believe, when he was with the Oil Kings. He won the Memorial Cup with the Oil Kings in '63, so he would have been right around 20 then, and that's 58 years ago. So in his late 70s.
Doug Barkley. All right, I was just looking at the Detroit roster. Bruce, let's talk a little bit.
Roger Crozier won the Conn Smythe that year, '66, even though they lost in the finals.
Do you actually remember? I was like 4. Do you remember watching those games yourself?
Oh, sure. Yeah, Detroit won the first 2 games of the finals. I think it was 3-2 and 5-2, and then Montreal came on strong and won the last 4 games. They got the winning goal in overtime in Olympia, Game 6. Henri Richard swatted it into the net with his hand, and somehow it was legal because he was a Hab, I think. And there was a huge rhubarb to end the season. It was actually quite unforgettable how that season wound down.
It reminds me of how England just got into the World Cup final here against.
That was. Yeah,
I'm cheering for England like crazy, but Bruce, that was an iffy penalty call on Raheem Sterling, and then the prospect that the goalie might have been zapped in the eyes with that laser. Did you see the picture? There was a picture of
I did.
Laser mark on his face. Someone was beaming a laser at him when Harry Kane was firing that ball into the net. Now, it's not clear if it ever hit him in the eyes, but it might have. I don't think the claim is that it hit him in the eyes, but that was shocking, and it's disgusting that a fan would ever do that. If you're ever in an arena and you see a fan with a laser pointing at, just immediately call. I was going to say punch him in the head. Don't punch him in the head. Or grab his laser. Immediately yell at him like, asshole, put that away. And go get security and say, I'm going to go get security right now.
Some dumbass actually did that at a Canucks game here. I was on Hockey Night in Canada maybe 6 or 8 years ago, and there was an image of the goalie getting the green laser pointer on the eyes of visiting goalie. And they could tell, didn't take a rocket scientist from behind the net cam to tell exactly where the thing was coming from. So they nailed that guy good. I think he got not only escorted from the building, but directly to jail. Do not pass go, do not collect $200.
And don't my initial react, don't punch him in the head. And the reason you'd yell at the guy to do it is because there could be harm right in the moment. Like it's not like there's imminent danger for someone on the ice. And now, of course, someone who would do that is either just totally immature and doesn't understand it, or is insane. So don't do anything but go get the authorities would be my.
Believe it or not, David, I actually hold in my wallet a little certificate that says I am trained in the ability to use a green laser pointer, which is basically illegal because of the danger that they pose to pilots. If a pilot gets a green laser in the eye, it could result in a plane
Wow.
crash. And so there's very, very strict rules with the aviation authorities, the government, and so on about using green laser pointers. As an astronomer and astronomy educator, I use them to point out constellations, and for a very benign purpose. But if there's an airplane in the vicinity, the thing has to go in my pocket. There's very hard and fast rules about those things. They are dangerous because they can disable the vision of somebody in a high stress situation. And
I also understand, Bruce, that you also once killed a man with a pencil. All right.
I've forgotten that one.
All right, let's move on. Buyouts. We're in the buyout window right now, apparently. I think we are. I don't know. Seems like it's
24 to 48 hours. I've been reading both, but the excellent heart of Puckpedia, I queried him directly, and he said that the window opened midnight last night, and effectively it was today. So we're there, and the decisions are going to start to trickle in now.
It lasts for a couple of weeks, till the free agent period starts.
Just day before.
So the point I want to make is this. The Oilers are looking at James Neal and Koskinen. So we'll look at the merits of both of those, okay? But my thought is, Bruce, that it's probably best for the Oilers just to wait to the second buyout period. Because the worst thing you could do would be buy out James Neal or Mikko Koskinen, and then you've targeted a number of free agents, you get none of them, and you just have all this money then sitting there not going to use. This is the Benoit Pouliot scenario where they bought up Pouliot and then didn't use the cap space. This is the worst thing that can happen, as far as I'm concerned. So what you want, because both players, you can make an argument, both players have some value still as players. It's better to have them on hand as players than just to buy them out and have them go somewhere else and sign, league minimum contracts or whatever they would get. And so the second buyout window is the one I'm interested in, and I think that would be a better strategy for the Oilers. And all that it has to do to trigger it, from my reading of Puckpedia, it was Cap Friendly, is the Oilers have to take someone to arbitrate. They have to offer arbitration, and if the player turns it down, I think, then the Oilers could take them to arbitration, and that would trigger. Or they could take two players that they haven't offered the qualifying offers to. Let's say, who do they have to qualify? Cahoon and Marody. Let's say that's those two players. They don't offer them qualifying offers because they want to actually lower their salaries for the coming year. That would also trigger it if they took those two players to arbitration for Edmonton. So it seems like it's fairly doable to trigger that second period. If I'm correct about this, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you're listening to this, could be wrong, but I see a real advantage just waiting before you know if you need that money or not, and see if you can move the contract, see if you can get maybe someone to eat half of Koskinen's contract on some deal. I don't think anyone's going to eat James Neal's contract, honestly, but what do you think of that, Bruce? Wait as opposed to now?
Oh, yeah, the idea of the second buyout window is that if a team does get taken to arbitration and they lose the hearing, and all of a sudden, their budget's gone to pot, one of the ways that they can work out of it is by opening that second buyout window and using it to buy a player out. Now, the history of arbitration, the Oilers have had very few cases over the years, and there's fewer and fewer around the league because I think both sides of a given negotiation realize it can be harmful both ways to have a negotiation where the owner or the team and the players stand in front of each other, and the team list all the reasons why the player sucks, so they shouldn't have to pay him, and then they turn around and say, well, we got you back, we want you, we want to be buddy with you again. It just has proven to be harmful. So usually they solve those cases before arbitration. I'd hate to think that would be, they would artificially do arbitrations just to open a buyout window. My thought is they'll just use the buyout window that exists between now and July 27th, which is the day before free agency, which is basically when Kyle Turris got bought out last year, right at the end of the buyout window. But this year, there's a window in between, in the middle of there, where everything's frozen for the Seattle expansion. So somewhere around July 17th to the 21st or 22nd, there's no trades allowed except with Seattle, and there's no buyouts. All of those machinations are shut down. So there are, in a sense, two buyout windows, but they're both like, a week apart, with the everything having to be resolved before free agency. So that leaves open your concern that if they do buy out James Neal and they go to free agency and they completely strike out and don't get anybody, that they wind up with a big amount of cap space available that they're not using. No, then they would have the option of making a trade for a more expensive player. Like, there's still ways that they could.
Yeah, they could still use that cap space during the year. That's a possibility. So it's not the end of the world. I guess. Like, you don't want to have bad faith with players. Let's say you have these two players that you haven't qualified and you want to get them at lower. It would have to actually probably be what you actually want to do with those players. So it couldn't be a bad faith move on the owner's part, but there might be a couple players like that who are in that situation. Kara and Cahoon both come to mind. Where
they could take the Oilers to arbitration too,
and
but
they
can't
could take the
necessarily
Oilers.
Count on
it. But you can't count on that. So you have to figure that out. Okay, so let's talk about the merits of both buyouts. I understand that Jason Gregor was delving into this today. Bruce, what was his argument about the Koskinen and Neal buyouts?
He was thinking that the guy to buy out between the two of them, if they're going to do one, and that's kind of the I think the sort of starting position from what Holland said at the end of the season presser was that they're strongly considering doing buyouts. But it seems unlikely they would buy out two different players. And clearly Koskinen and Neal are at the top of the list. Like, you could buy out Kyle Turris, but there's very little to be gained from that one. So it's more likely to be Koskinen, where he would, instead of being paid $4.5 million for the last year of his contract, he would get $1.5 million for each of the next 2 years and be gone, and the Oilers would have $3 million worth of cap space to sign another goalie or what have you in 21-22. The other one with James Neal, he's got 2 years to go at $5.75 million. And so to buy him out, they would wind up with a cap hit of 1.9, a cap penalty of 1.9 million for 4 years, but it would open up 3.8 million for each of the next 2 years. So a significant addition to the cap space. And to me, he's the choice for me of which one to be bought out. In that, at $5.75 million, he's the third highest paid forward on the club. And, he's just, he's basically, it seems like he's reached the cliff or certainly the downside of the hill. He's scored since calendar turned to 2020, a year and a half ago, 5 goals in all that time, 5 goals. And that's 42 games. I mean, he's been hurt. He got sick, but, and so part of that you can say, well, poor guy. But part of it you can say, well, he's 34 years old, and it's all the bumps and bruises and the years are starting to catch up with his body, and he's slower than he was, like to the eye. I thought he would, he looked a day late and a dollar short on a lot of nights where he just wasn't getting to the places he needed to get to in time to do the damage that he used to do. And his shot rates have fallen off, his ice time has dropped off, and you could, for the 3.8 million, you could wind up, I think, finding a much better player on the open market than you could by just keeping James Neal and paying him his existing contract.
Here's from the original Puzar on this this idea of delaying arbitration or using the second buyout window is the idea. Yep. So his idea is it's triggered by a player filing for arbitration. That's the most obvious way that it happens, right? And he says, I've been promoting having a deal agreed to with Cahoon or Kara, but not signing it until later. Qualify that player, have them file for arbitration, and then settle later before the hearing. Gives Holland more time to ascertain if he needs to buy out dollars. So Ira Cooper is a lawyer,
Yeah.
a smart guy, and this is a lawyer's mind at work here, a smart guy's
I was
mind
going
at
to
work.
say.
So very sneaky. I like it. And again, Bruce, look at what Tampa just did. If the Oilers aren't thinking about this, they're not doing their job at this point. If you're not thinking outside the box like this, you're not doing your job. You use every tool and lever that you can to get ahead in the NHL. And if this worked, if this could work, I'd say go for it. Now, we'll see if that were to happen or not. But I like it. I like it.
Now, one of the considerations here is the whole justification for the Neal for Lucic trade when it happened was this very fact that Neal could be bought out, whereas Lucic effectively couldn't. His contract was structured in such a way by Peter Chiarelli that even a buyout wouldn't work. It would free up so little cap space it wouldn't even pay for his replacement, let alone open up any room for another guy, for a replacement level player. Like, it was just because everything he got was in bonuses. I think his salary is like $1 million for the last couple of years, and everything else is bonuses.
Yeah.
So the whole point of getting Neal was, the Oilers are actually paying Neal effectively more than they paid Lucic because they retained $750,000. They're paying Neal 5.75, so he's costing them 6.5, like literally $500,000 more than Lucic. His production is about the same as Lucic, and the big advantage of this guy is that they do have the opportunity to buy him out. So they either pull the trigger on that, or to me, almost they lose the trade.
I wouldn't worry about losing the trade, Bruce. Or it doesn't really. To me, it doesn't matter. Like what matters.
What was the point of it then?
Well, Lucic had to go. That was one point. Okay, he was too slow. He wasn't fitting in. He was not producing. His production was terrible in his last 2 years as an Oiler. He was a defensive liability. He had to go. So you're moving him for the best deal you can with the least amount of poison pill that you can. So, but it's kind of like it's a different debate almost. The debate now to me is, you have this player. Can you use that cap space that he represents better than using it on him? That's the only issue. And I don't know the answer to that. So if they can't, is Neal beyond the pale? Can he not play in the NHL anymore? No, I think actually as a fourth liner, he's not ideal, but I could see another team signing James Neal to a 1-year contract at a minimum salary. So I don't he's the kind of Corey. He's been on teams to the Stanley Cup final. He was against Chicago. He was good in the playoffs. He wasn't good this year. He's coming off COVID this year. Yep. So I don't think it's a slam dunk that James Neal is washed up as an NHL or has no value, and that you have to buy him out. I just think if you can use that money better, then do it. And if you can't, don't. But the Koskinen thing, to me, the Oilers really do, I believe, have a need in that. And you could come back with Koskinen and Mike Smith, and Mike Smith, he just had a great year. He had a great year. Could he have another great year? Yes. It's kind of a coin flip, I'm going to suggest. Could Koskinen rebound? He had a good year prior to this last one Koskinen did, and last year was mediocre. Could he come back and have a good year? Yes. So it's kind of two coin flips on both these players. Maybe you'll muddle through if you go with them. But is that the best idea, to kind of muddle through with these two? Or should you turn to a younger goalie in his 20s and look for a real future number one goalie right now for the Oilers? You also have Stuart Skinner, who just had a really strong AHL season. Maybe the best idea is to struggle through with Koskinen and Mike Smith, and see how Stuart Skinner and Konovalov develop in the AHL, because that might be the answer, the cheapest answer for your goaltending problems going forward. But it's kind of attractive idea to buy out Koskinen this year, and if you think you can get a goalie who could be your number one goalie, kind of in the Cam Talbot class of guys in their 25 to 30 who've been second pairing, have done really well in that second pairing role, and now are available to the Oilers at a reasonable price. And the name that comes up again and again is Chris Driedger. So that's kind of an attractive notion in terms of using the buyout on Koskinen as opposed to Neal, and kind of struggling through with Neal one more year, and then taking advantage of his buyout ability and winning the Lucic trade a year from now rather than right now, because you just now there's a different priority, a bigger priority, and that's bringing in another goalie. And I'm not saying that's what I would do. Like it's for me, it's kind of 50-50 in terms of who you would buy out right now. You'd have to have a really good sense you could get that goalie if it's going to be Koskinen, right? So in some ways, the decision comes down to what's your best bet. And maybe you wait till after the bout period and you see, did we get the forward or did we get the goalie? If we got the goalie, then it's Koskinen. If we got the forward, then it's Neal. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I can. I mean, sure, I'll buy that logic.
I didn't persuade you.
I'm not counting on that second buyout window because it hasn't been available to the Oilers for years because of their history with arbitration. But I mean, it would be nice to have that knowledge in advance. Which free agents can you sign so we can get rid of that guy? But the way it's set up is you have to get rid of the guy and make the room, and then use the money to buy. So if you move Koskinen and you wind up signing a left winger and not a goalie, then I mean, obviously they're going to sign a goalie, but I mean, not necessarily the one you want. So it's a tricky equation, lots of balls in the air. Here's one for you. There's all this talk about trading Caleb Jones. There's all this talk about Seth Jones wanting out of Columbus, and then people saying, well, if Chicago, for instance, were to get Caleb Jones, that would maybe help them convince Seth Jones to come to Chicago. Here's an idea. You offer Caleb Jones to Columbus. You say, we're going to give you Seth's brother, and maybe you can convince Seth that he wants to stay and play with his brother. And we'll throw in Koskinen, and you send one of your two goalies to us.
So you could apply that argument to any team, Bruce. Like you could say to Dallas, you want to sign Seth Jones? Okay, here's Caleb.
I'm targeting Columbus because he's there already.
Well, you could do Columbus. You could do any other team. It's a broader offer, and you will retain half of Koskinen's contract, probably the Oilers would say, and you take it, and then you. But you know what? This is you got first of all to consider. You have to buy the premise that Seth Jones is so keen to play with Caleb Jones that he will pull every string in the book to move to the team where Caleb's playing. Bruce, I don't buy that.
I don't either.
I've
read nothing that says the brothers are particularly that bonded that's likely to happen. I think that's one of these sort of fan talk. Well, he'll want to play with his brother. Yeah, well, maybe he would, but maybe he's Scott Niedermayer and he's going to sign with the team where his brother's playing, but I doubt it.
The most likely thing, so let's say that you're right, and the second arbitration window that I'm speculating about is kind of just speculation, and it's kind of it's what sneaky, tricky, clever people think about, and it's something the Oilers would never actually do. What would be possible though, Bruce, is that just before the free agency period starts, like in the last few days when the buyouts are still open, the Oilers will have a really good sense of what's going to be open to them in free agency and what isn't, what's realistic. So that's when you might see the timing of the buyout might be then. They'll have a really good idea that they're really in on Hyman or they're really in on Dreger or something like that, and not on the other guy. And that's when they might make their move in terms of a buyout. Does that make sense? Probably makes the most sense, I'm going to suggest.
Well, that's when Nashville bought out Tourists last year. They waited right till the very end and pulled the trigger, and I'm not quite sure who they bought on free agency thereafter, but they used the whole window. I don't see there's any particular advantage to pulling the trigger right away.
Yeah, and I don't see any NHL teams rushing. I'm looking at the NHL coverage right now, and just see so far, I don't see any buyouts. It's not happening. So,
well, for most of them, you have to wait. The first indications that they get put on waivers for purpose of being bought out. So a lot of that news will come in at 10 o'clock in the morning on a given day that the waiver wire gets declared. So if you're keen on seeing buyouts, check the NHL feeds at 5 after 10 in the morning, and you got an idea of what might be ticking there. But.
Okay. Let's move on and let's talk about Zach Hyman. So the last news from Friedman on Oilers Now today, this is Friday, July 9th, is, and who knows when we'll do the next podcast. Hopefully the news will be coming a little bit faster and more furiously. The last news on Hyman from the credible source, Elliot Friedman, is that it's not looking good in Toronto. So if nothing changes in Toronto, he's not staying there. He's going to test the free agency market. And, of course, Toronto could have this player. The rumor is, and I don't know where this comes from, I think multiple sources at this point, that the Leafs have offered something in the lines of 4 years at $4.25 million for Hyman, which for a player of his stature, age, free agency is a really low ball. It's at least $1 million probably under what he's going to get. Probably a lot more. That's what, $17 million over 4 years. You could see Hyman getting $30 million on a contract, guaranteed $36 million on a contract, Bruce. So this is significantly huge, massive hometown discount. He'd be probably crazy to take that given the short shelf life of NHL players. And looking forward, that's a lot of many millions of dollars to turn down. Toronto could offer more if they would move a player like Nylander, I guess. But they don't choose to do that. So to me, this is partly Toronto saying this is what we have for you, but it's also them saying we really don't want you at the price that the market's going to give you. That's not. We value Nylander more than we value you at your market price. And so I don't know if that's concerning or not for any future team looking at getting him. That Toronto's making that judgment about this player, that they don't think he's as good a bet heading into his 30s as they think Nylander is right now. I think that's a sane position for Toronto to take. Nylander's a younger player. When I saw him play this year, I thought he was fantastic, at least against the Oilers. So Friedman said a couple possibilities, much rumored, and he just gave two, Edmonton and Detroit. I'm sure there are others. Like if Zach Hyman goes to free agency, there's going to be 6 or 7 teams, I would guess, in on a player like that. What's your thought on him, Bruce? Are you keen? Would you like to see him sign with the Oilers at free agency UFA market value, which is like between probably, I'm going to guess, $5.5 and $6 million a year over about 4, 5, 6 years? Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that's a lot of lettuce. I mean, he's a very, very good player. He broke through as a college player, and he had 1 year in the minors, joined Toronto with their fantastic rookie class of 2015-16, and he's had 5 good years in a row, and I would argue 4 outstanding years in a row, where he's had consistently put up about 40 points, but in declining number of games, in part due to COVID, and been, big double-digit plus player, outscorer, like big-time outscorer year after year, with, plus 72 on his career now, 5-year career. And in the parity NHL, that's pretty darn good. Now, some of that, of course, is the quality line mates that he's playing with, but the fact is that Zach Hyman makes his line better. He really is a good
glue player.
Glue player, yeah. He's a glue player. And he's a guy, you put him on Connor McDavid's wing, and the McDavid line is going to be better. There's just no two ways about it. Is it worth 5.5 for a long-term commitment? He's already 29 years old. How long can he keep going? I would suggest he's going to, for the foreseeable future, but I don't know that I would be willing to bet on 6 years for a 29-year-old. Takes him through age 34, and I would be happier with 3 or 4 years. But the way free agent market has traditionally worked is that the most desirable players sign 6 and 7 year deals on day one.
Yeah, this is about half of these deals really work out badly, I think, for the team. That maybe even higher than half, but at least half of them. If you're signing a winger, 28, 29-year-old winger, 30-year-old winger, about half those deals really go south, and they go south fast, and it's usually it's fast. Like with Louis Eriksson and Andrew Ladd, and it's usually not. It's just bad right from the start almost. So Zach Hyman, Bruce, finished for NHL regular forwards. He finished 57th out of more than 400 forwards. So he was a top line forward, obviously, this year.
Points per 60?
Points per 60, 2.46 points per 60.
That's nice.
By by comparison, Tatar Hall this year had 1.86 points per 60. He finished 151st. So he outscored, and this is if you go over 2 years, and it's good to have a bigger sample size on points per 60. The last 2 years, Hyman is 60th in the NHL for NHL forwards, Bruce, 2.32 points per 60. Hall is 132nd. So Hall's scoring like a second line winger the last 2 years at 1.96 per 60. Jaden Schwartz is right in the same ballpark as Hall for both years. He's another UFA. So there's some different players out there who are kind of interesting. Hall, Schwartz. I'm going to guess they'd be less expensive than Zach Hyman. I guess I'm going to admit it right now. I kind of have an irrational attachment to Zach Hyman as a free agent because I see him as a glue player. I see him as the Chris Kunitz for Sidney Crosby. I've made this comparison before. He strikes me as a very similar kind of player. And Kunitz, he came to the Pittsburgh Penguins at a similar age, and he was great for 6 or 7 years. Helped that team to win in the playoffs, win at least one Stanley Cup, maybe two when he was there, and was a great line mate for Sidney Crosby. So that's the narrative in my head, which is probably a false narrative, and I should dispel it. But it's there. Like once you see it, you can't not see it. So that's where I'm at with Hyman. I would be open to the Oilers pursuing this player, even though I know that by and large these contracts go south and they go south fast. So I really think the best model for the Oilers is to get a player on a Tyson Barrie contract, like the Thomas Tatar option, or maybe Jayden Schwartz is going to fit into this category, where you give a player like a 1 or a 2 year deal, Bruce, at $3 or $4 million a year, and you try him out there. And in the meantime, you give Raphael Lavoie and Carter Savoy. Is it Carter Savoy? Is that the right one? There's two Savoys. Carter Savoy and Matthew Savoy is the other one. And
right.
And players like this, time to develop and see what you got there while you're, because that's really the answer for the Oilers. Almost certainly, Bruce, isn't this UFA, like signing UFA to a long-term deal. It's and we're going to segue here to the Tampa model. It's doing what Tampa did, which is a continual development of players in the AHL, which for the Oilers has been crazy talk for a long time because they didn't draft well enough and develop well enough to have that happen. But they are finally drafting and developing well enough, it looks like to me, where this should be a realistic possibility, where we're actually looking for this steady stream of players, just like Tampa has had, to build your roster without killing your salary cap.
Yeah, well, Tyson Barrie's he's the poster boy for that, in terms of he came in for 1 year for a reasonable amount, and while he was playing here, Evan Bouchard is 1 year, I would say, closer now to taking over that job. If they'd signed Tyson Barrie for multiple years, he would have been a full-out roadblock to Bouchard rather than a speed bump. So that 1 year solution has certainly has some appeal. The question is, do they have wingers of the quality in the system that can grow into the role? As for Chris Kunitz, when Pittsburgh acquired him by trade, not as a free agent, he was already under contract, a 4-year deal at $3.7 million, not too bad, and he was only in the first year of that 4-year deal. So Pittsburgh traded for not just the player, but for the cost certainty for several years ahead. And then they wound up signing him to 2 extensions, and he never got to $4 million. He just basically stayed at the same level, high threes, and he played in Pittsburgh for like 9 years, and he was a staple on Crosby's wing. But they paid, they paid a high price in trade capital. They traded Ryan Whitney to get
first, I believe, also,
to get Kunitz, and so
maybe not a first. They paid this Ryan Whitney, who was trending to be a number 1 D man. So they paid at one end, but on the contract, you're right. Now the cap was lower then, so it's probably in the $60 million range back then, something like that. So his, it's
as in terms of percent cap, closer.
So the Oilers, Hyman is that kind of player right now. Like that's a good comparable for him right now. But Chris Kunitz did something which is not normal for a player. of that ilk. He kept it going into his 30s for a long time, and that's the exception. Not the rules. So the Oilers have already made a bet on one guy, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, that he's going to rebound from his crappy scoring year at even strength and last till he's 33, 34, 35. They already have one bet like that. Do you really want to make another? Because if you do, and one of them goes south, that's a huge impediment. We already see with Milan Lucic. We have a cautionary tale. Oilers are still dealing with the repercussions with the James Neal contract. We see it with Neal. We see it with Lucic, the downside of these contracts. Okay. Do you really want to go down that road with more than one player right now? With more than Nugent Hopkins? You've already done it once. Maybe the really prudent thing to do is to lay off and go for a shorter term bet on a Jayden Schwartz or a Thomas Tatar. And, encountering that is just the hope that you could win a cup with Zach Hyman, that he solves your problem with McDavid. And you have Hyman, McDavid, and Puljujärvi on the one line, and then you have the dynamite line on the other. And, you got Duncan Keith, the veteran on defense, and maybe you found a way to bring in a really good goalie too, and you can go for the cup, which is a very tantalizing, because it's so, there's 31 teams. It's hard to win the cup. You got to take risks. So they're weighing these two things. It's not easy, Bruce. It's not easy. I don't think it's an easy decision.
No.
Let's, Bruce, Jim Matheson of the Journal made an interesting comment, because he said, Oiler fans are all over the map. A vocal segment wants no part of Duncan Keith because he's old, says Jim Matheson. Makes $5.5 million for 2 years. It's $5.4 million for 2 years. I think it's $5.5 million for 2 years, and his game's dropped off. But want them to investigate trade for Tarasenko, who's had 2 shoulder surgeries, makes $7.5 million next 2 years, and game has dropped off. It's actually 3 shoulder surgeries, is it not, for Tarasenko? Yes. So Jim made this comment, and some people were saying it's not the same thing. Like, one player is truly washed up in Duncan Keith, where the other player, Tarasenko, just had a fall off because he was banged up, coming off surgeries, and is going to come back strong. Mm-hmm. Bruce, for me, Tarasenko's it's 2 years at $7.5 million. He had a really bad year this past season. He was scoring at a fourth line level this year in the few games that he played. 3 shoulder surgeries in 3 years. I would go with Jaden Schwartz on 2-year deal, or Thomas Tatar. I would not be interested in this myself. What about you?
$7.5 million. That's not at full freight. I mean, he's asked St. Louis to trade him because apparently he has a difference of opinion with the team's doctors, who did not find the problem with his shoulder, which is why he needed multiple surgeries. He had some kind of a issue in his shoulder that was not fixed with the first, as I understand it, 2 surgeries. And finally he got another consultation and got it fixed somewhere else. And if it's fully fixed, I mean, this is a player who from 2014 to 2019, 5 straight years, he scored 37, 40, 39, 33, 33 goals. And he scored between 66 and 75 points every one of those years.
Model of consistency.
Goal for every assist for every goal. Pumped him in. And now the last 2 years, though, on his $7.5 million contract, he scored 3 goals in 10 games and then 4 goals in 24 games. So he scored in the last 2 years. St. Louis paid him $15 million, and he scored 7 goals, over $2 million a goal. He's got 2 years left, $15 more million to pay this guy out. And if you invest those $15 million and the shoulder is not the same and he doesn't come back to his previous form, you are hooped. So,
you know who outscored him at points per 60 this year, Bruce? James Neal. James Neal, Bruce.
Well, there you go.
James Neal had 1.44 points per 60 this year, and Tarasenko, I think, had, where is it, 1.34 points per 60.
Neal for Tarasenko, I'd consider that. Or St. Louis retaining. I mean, they're going to have to take a bad contract back, or they're going to have to retain. They're dealing from a very weak position here. The players requested a trade. The players damaged goods. So all the teams are going to be trying to fleece St. Louis. So let's hope that Ken Holland is among those teams, as opposed to the one being saying, well, he's the answer to your problem. Send us Ethan Bear and send us Ryan McLeod and send us, I mean, no. He's, nice in theory, but you'd want to have real solid information from the doctors, and preferably not from the St. Louis team doctors that messed up the original surgery, but have good independent medical advice on where he's at. I would be, to me, the red flag is just gigantic on this guy,
isn't it? My
especially
goodness.
2 more years at 7.5.
Yeah, let's say you could get them to retain half the contract, which maybe they would, I have no idea. Why would they do that? I guess St. Louis. Why would St. Louis do that? Because they want to get rid of them. They're tired. It's so poisoned between them. But I mean, for half that, you could sign Tatar or Jaden Schwartz or both of them over the next 2 years for Tarasenko's salary, and you got then 2 chances with Schwartz and Tatar, and Tatar's actually had a really good scoring at even strength this year. He was top line scoring, I believe, in the NHL. He didn't get played in the playoffs because for some reason didn't fit their style of play, I guess. And which is a red flag for Tatar as well. But it drives down his price, and he's not banged up. Jaden Schwartz is 20. Where is he? Let me go to him. He's 28 right now. Same age as Tatar, pretty much, and
scored 8 goals in 40
games. The year before, he 22 goals in 71. So he's got some injury problems, obviously, as well, that he's been fighting through. But he'd be not that expensive, I don't think. So I don't know. I just, I guess if you're again, you're going for the Stanley Cup, you're going to have to take some risks to do that, and that's what's happened with Nugent Hopkins. I think they're betting on him rebounding and having a better year. And I don't think that's a terrible bet in the short term for the next few years with Nugent Hopkins. But how many of those bets for players, forwards, with some red flags heading into their 30s, do you want to take, especially on big money contracts? Now, of course, Tarasenko is just 2 years. So if you go with him and it doesn't work out, well, that's just 2 more years off Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl's prime, where you're basically hooped because you bet on the wrong guy. I guess if they got no better use for their cap money, you might want to look at that. If they get outbid on everything else, is a plan C from Planet X, that might be might be something that you would try.
Plan 9 from outer space. Huh?
Yeah, was that the name of the movie? Let me just look at our list here, Bruce. Tampa. I touched on Tampa a little bit. There's talk that the Oilers might be able to get a player from Tampa, but Bruce, that really isn't the Tampa model. Is to get players heading into the 30s. They did it a few times, right? They brought in Ryan Callahan. Ryan McDonough. And the Callahan bet was flopped. They brought in Patrick, but that was on a cheap contract. The Tampa model isn't to bring in players who are 29, 30, who are earning $4, $5, $6 million, whatever it is, $4 or $5 million a year, like Tyler Johnson or Andrej Palat, or Alex Killorn. He's earning just, I think, $4.4 million a year, but he's 32 or 33. That's not the Tampa model. The Tampa model is something else. And I think it's a great model. Yeah. And it's been talked about forever in Edmonton, draft and develop, but we keep going for the shiny thing. And Oiler fans are awfully tempted by that shiny thing. Yep. That player who's 28, 29, has had a good career, might have a few question marks, but you go for it anyway. The Tampa model is something else altogether, isn't it?
Yeah, the Tampa model is built from within. You look at their roster, and we've talked recently and written recently about the core 12 model, where you have the top, number 1 goalie, top 2 defense pairs, top 2 forward lines, and the 3 center. And if you look at that model in Tampa Bay, uh, almost all of the guys were developed within Tampa Bay, either drafted there or signed outright as free agents, like Yanni Gourde was, where he was signed as a 22-year-old free agent playing the East Coast League, and look where he is now. Uh, Developing their players within their own franchise and paying them. Once they've established what they can do, they pay their own developed guys, right? Like all of I mean, it's not just their first rounders, Stamkos, Hedman, Vasilevsky, superstars at each of forward, defense, and goal. But their later draft picks, Killorn, Kucherov, for goodness sake, Braden Point, for goodness sake, Andre Palat, who was a 7th-round draft pick, terrific player, Anthony Cirelli, 3rd-round pick, terrific player, Matthew Joseph, Ross Colton, a guy that scored the cup-winning goal, he was a 4th-round draft pick. He was the guy who replaced the 4th-round draft pick they had to move on from last year because he was expensive, getting too expensive, Cedric Paquette. And they just keep finding new guys that they've drafted in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 7th round and pump them in the lineup. And when they prove they can play, they pay them. They work their way up and then they get paid. And if you look at Tampa's payroll model, you'll see that of the top 13 salaries on the team, 12 of them are the core 12. The only guy that's getting paid who's outside the core 12 is Tyler Johnson, who's had some good seasons in Tampa and is still a good productive player. He scored the game-winning goal in the previous win in the Stanley Cup Finals and was still finding ways to contribute. But everybody in their core 12 gets paid. Almost all of them were developed from within, and even those that they acquired by trade, only McDonough came to Tampa as a fully developed NHL player. They made and grossly won 2 trades to bring in 2 terrific young defensemen in Mikhail Sergachev and Eric Chernak, who's a wonderful player to my eye. I was just drooling over Chernak's play in the playoffs this year. Big, strong, tough, mean, move the puck, make plays, score points. He was doing it all.
He's only 23.
He's the 13th highest paid player on the team at $2.9 million. They got 12 guys that are making $4 million and up. But guess what? Every one of those guys has a role. Guess also what? They have 0 dead cap space. They got nothing in the way of buyouts, retained salary, any of that crap that the Oilers are dealing with, 3 or 4 guys deep year after year. They just don't seem to make mistakes, David. And, they find the guys, they find the role for them. They say, okay, you're going to be our 3C for the next few years. We're going to pay you. Here's a 6-year contract, $30 million, like they gave Yanni Gourde. And he's paying off on that. And it's a wonderful model. They perfected, I think, this is the best cap model that we've seen during the entire cap era. And, of course, there's lots of controversy about what happened with Kucherov this year. They found the workaround of how they could afford to give big raises that were due to Vasilevsky. You got a $6 million raise. To Sergachev, who got a $4 million raise. To Chernak, who got a $2 million raise. And everybody thought they're going to have to move on from some of these veterans. And because of the Kucherov caper, as I'll call it, they were able to hold on to these guys for 1 more year. But now I think the die is cast that they're going to have to move on from some of these guys. I do think there's a value veteran to be found there on the trade market. But there's going to be enough teams looking for him. But Tampa's going to be able, they're not going to just give the guy away. They're going to be able to actually get something back for him. But
yeah, well, good for, I think with Kucherov, honestly, I think good for them. Like the rules are there, and your job is to win the Stanley Cup. And
fix the rules, NHL. I'm mad at the NHL.
Fix the rules, NHL, but it's not up to Tampa to fix the rules. It's up to them to exploit the rules. And they did it. And I don't have a problem with it. Like, honestly, I don't. And I wish the Oilers would be in the same category, in the same kind of cagey, smart, tricky, sneaky, whatever it takes to win. Just do it. Because this is what the NHL is about. And stop. Don't complain about it. I haven't heard the Oilers themselves complain about it. But Don't complain.
They ran a $90 million team in the playoffs. They were basically exactly $9.5 million over the regular season salary cap because they added Kucherov, who they paid zero cap hit for the entire season. It was kind of sleazy, and the timing of both his surgery and his recovery is a little bit dodgy, and that it just worked out. It just happened to work out just perfect. But they stick handled around and through the existing rules. It's up to the NHL to fix that.
Exactly.
And to me, Julien Brisebois, the GM of Tampa, is a genius. Like, he's got it going on.
Brilliant. I don't say sleazy, I say brilliant. Those are the rules.
It's possible to be both.
It is possibly both. Sleazy and brilliant. I'll meet you halfway and say that. It's sleazy and brilliant. Killorn is not 32 or 33. He's 31 now, I believe.
Right.
So I was incorrect on that. Yeah. So, there's a couple. So everyone in Edmonton, including me, is thinking, who can we trade? Like, who can we get off Tampa? That's the loser's game here, is to think, who can you get off Tampa at top dollar? The winner's game for Edmonton is something that Ken Holland has talked about, like patience, continuity. And this means building from within. And you have three players. You had the best line in the AHL, probably, AHL last year, in Cooper Marody, Ryan McLeod, and Tyler Benson. And in Edmonton, the thing seems to be, is Cooper Marody even going to stick around? Cooper Marody at the same age is having years just like Yanni Gourde had in the AHL, same kind of scoring level. Mm-hmm. And you're just going to throw him out the window? And Tyler Benson, people are, he's not fast enough, blah, blah, blah. You have these guys. Are they even going to get a chance at Edmonton before you discard them? Or are you going to go for some older player in Tampa who maybe, from Tampa, who they have, can't afford, maybe can help them, maybe can't help them going forward, and put all your eggs in that basket. This isn't the right model. It's not the right thinking, Bruce, to be. Right. And you talked about buyouts. They don't have, is the right thinking to be even thinking buyouts? Maybe you just suffer through it, and you don't buy out, so you don't screw your team going forward. Now, again, if there is a really good player you can get in place of that. But do you buy out James Neal so you can make a bet on a 29-year-old player on a long-term contract who's going to fall flat on his face? So there are different ways of winning in the NHL, but doing the buyout and then signing Zach Hyman with that money isn't the Tampa way. That's not what we're seeing. So if we're going to be consistent and push that Tampa model, I think the idea is, you're very, very careful about long-term contracts, and you maybe Nuge made sense. He's your guy.
He's an internal signing. To me, Nuge is the same guy in many respects as Killorn, Palat. Cirelli is coming through that mold. Gourde, that came up in the team, proved himself, and they invested 6-7 years in these guys, $4.5 million. They've always done the same thing with Nugent Hopkins. So they got one of those guys. It's like that. Tampa's got 4 or 5 of these mid-level guys that they developed themselves, and they paid internally a fair price. And they believed in their guys, and they paid them long term, and they're getting the payback. The other thing that's totally different between the two, unrestricted free agents. Okay, I mean, on the one side, we already know about all the damage that's done in the Edmonton's dead cap space, right? Benoit Pouliot, they're still paying for that guy. Andrei Sekera, Milan Lucic. You got these big cap penalties that remain in the dead cap space. But even on the current Oilers roster, these guys all dressed in the playoffs for Edmonton that were signed as unrestricted free agents. Chris Russell, Mikko Koskinen, Alex Chiasson, Mike Smith, Josh Archibald, Tyson Barrie, Dominic Cahoon, Slater Kukuk, Devon Shore. About $20 million in cap hit. I had a quick ad. On the Tampa side, these are their unrestricted free agents that they signed. Pat Maroon, Luke Shen, Curtis McElhinney. 3 guys, $3 million total that they invested in free agents. They built their team from inside out, and they built it beautifully.
So Oiler fans, though, will roast. The Oilers Ken Holland will get roasted if he doesn't sign a UFA, a big name. He will get roasted. So if as an Oiler fan, are you part of the problem or part of the solution? Because maybe the solution is to support a GM who might say, hey, we're not going to go for we're going to make a couple small kind of Tyson Barrie-like bets in the short term. but we are building from within. We're not going to tie up our cap into the future, because when it's time to pay Ryan McLeod, when it's time to pay Raphael Lavoie, Philip Broberry, Evan Bouchard, we want to have the money, and we won't have that money if we tie up all this money in Zach Hyman or Vladimir Tarasenko, or Tarasenko's only on a 2-year deal. But it's just our thinking as fans here maybe has to change a little bit. And, before this was the Tampa model, this was the Detroit model, Bruce. It was imported from Detroit to Tampa. Yep. And Ken Holland was given credit at one point for developing. So he knows what
Yzerman is Holland's disciple, and Brisebois is Yzerman's disciple. It's like,
so what is the pressure?
Plato,
So what's the market pressure on? What's the different market pressure on Holland? Is there a different, like, to win now with McDavid and Draisaitl? And we always hear this. Well, McDavid will be happy if they get Duncan Keith, or McDavid will probably be happy if they get so and so Tarasenko. I haven't heard that yet about Tarasenko yet, but like this idea that Connor McDavid would be happy with this or that veteran player coming in, that's not. You can't necessarily go with what Connor McDavid wants. You've got to win if you're going to win and win long term. If you're going to follow the Tampa model, which I would be in favor of them doing, and bringing in, like, running that line of Benson, Marody, and McLeod. I talked about this a month ago. How about that as your third or fourth line next year? Try that, and see which of those players stick. That's the Tampa model. But who will applaud Ken Holland if he does that this summer?
Well, here's one place he could go. How about winning a trade? Tampa, I mean, these are the guys they got from trade. Chernak, Sergachev, and McDonough that we talked about already. Jan Ruta, they got by trade. Just a useful depth player. Blake Coleman and Barclay Goodrow each cost them first-round draft choices. A heavy price to pay, but when the time came to invest their draft choices to go now for the cup, they got two guys that helped them win 2 cups. And David Savard, who somehow, with all the cap shenanigans this year, they were able to work out a deal with 2 teams to take on 3/4 of his cap, squeeze him in under the last bit, and add an excellent, experienced defenseman for the cup run. I mean, you could argue that Tampa won every one of those trades in the sense that they got what they needed from the trade.
So to me, the surest sign, and I agree with you, like, win a trade. Like, they lost the Athanasio trade. There's extenuating circumstances. There's always excuses, right? You lose the trade, there's excuses. They lost the Athanasio trade. They blew it with the tourist signing. Our mileage will vary on the Neal for Lucic trade. I think they lost the trade, frankly. Calgary won it. Calgary won it better than Edmonton won it. I think both guys needed the trade change of scenery. I just think the sure sign that the Oilers have lost the plot going forward is probably, I'd love to see Zach Hyman come here, but I think that might be the sure sign that the Oilers have lost the plot, is if they give big money to another guy heading into their 30s that they don't, that Toronto decides to move on from, essentially.
All right.
And, pretty smart organization. Some people don't think that about the Leafs. I do. I think actually that Dubas is a smart GM. And if he's making that calculation, that, to me, that says something. And it should be a red flag for the Oilers. That's one red flag on Zach Hyman right there. Even though everything else, there's so much I like about that idea.
Right.
That's a red flag. That Toronto's decided that they want to win the cup as much as anyone else, and they're moving on from the player. They're not going to pay him market value because they don't think that's a good bet. Bruce, the surest sign, though, that the Oilers have lost the plot is if they move Samorukov or Lavoie in a Duncan Keith trade.
Yeah.
That would be like I can see there's always room. Bringing in Duncan Keith it's just 2 years. Tarasenko's just 2 years. So these shorter term deals are never as disastrous. So I'm a little less critical of whatever happens there. But if you move a really strong bet as a prospect for Duncan Keith,
yeah,
you should be fired.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Tampa traded some prospects along the way, and I suppose if you looked around the league, you could find a few guys that came out of the Tampa system.
Carter Verhaeghe.
Yeah, They couldn't afford to sign him last summer just because they were so up against it on the cap at the time,
Is that
and
what
they
happened?
wound up letting him go. Yeah,
Okay.
that was before the Kucherov solution
Did they
came along.
did
Uh,
they did they trade him, or did they just
he went as a free agent, and he was a steal for Florida.
was
So
he?
that that was one that got away. And I know they traded a little basket of prospects for McDonough, but those were guys like Nemestikov, who's an okay player. They traded for Ruta. They traded our man Slater Kukuk, who was a first-round draft pick, 10th overall draft pick for Tampa years ago. It didn't really work out in Tampa. They got something for him. They moved him on. They actually got a useful player back for him.
And
You
Drouin
know.
for Sergachev, the ultimate master stroke.
Oh,
Was that ever brilliant? Was that ever a killer trade? Was
oh.
that ever smart? Man
That had to be killing Montreal fans
alive.
in the finals. I mean, Drouin's not even on the team on personal leave, and there's Sergachev just ripping it up for the Bolts.
Yeah, so I guess where I end up in all of this discussion is, Bruce, is I'm real careful on the buyouts
Hmm.
unless there's something obviously that's a really good bet, probably not a long-term bet for the Oilers even. Like you just you want to you think you can bring in, let's say, Tatar and Schwartz on short-term contracts and maybe a defenseman of the same milk, and you're making these kind of interesting bets that are more short-term bets with that buyout money. That would work for me, but I really really want to see. I like deep down I'm very conservative on giving these players into their 30s money
Hmm.
and acquiring players at that age. And
Right.
my thing is, you know, go with the kids.
Hmm.
You've developed them. I
Hmm.
think there's clear signals that you have developed players in your farm system that deserve a chance. Give them that chance. Have the courage to give them that chance. Don't even if the coach even if even if the coach is determined. One of my thoughts is no matter who the Oilers acquire at left defense, 10 games into the season, Chris Russell will be playing there, Bruce. So even if
Or
the
right
coach,
defense.
even if or right defense, whoever it is, don't worry about it. Chris Russell's
Yeah.
whoever, like, even
Oh.
if the coach is determined, like, likes his veterans and
Hmm.
is determined to, like, trust the players you're developing. Try that
Okay.
because there's enough there
And
to
here's
that.
the kicker for you on Tampa's core 12 that we talked about. Every last one of the 12 is already signed for next season. And many of them are signed all the way through 2026, 27, 28 even, I think Vasilevsky. And uh, the only because the cap is going to catch up and they're going to have to move some of these guys that they're going to have to fill holes. But as of right now, they got 12 core 12 players all signed. Edmonton has 5 core 12 players, at least the core 12 as I identified it, who are signed, and 7 who are free agents. They got one of them, Nugent Hopkins, looked after, but they got a lot of holes and uh, a lot of problems to solve. And some of it, I mean, you can sign Adam Larson internally, that'll solve one of those holes. But most of the guys, many of the guys in the core 12, I'm not sure you necessarily even want to bring him back. I mean, Cahoon is one of them, Kara is one of them, Kulikov is one of them.
You
You know,
don't. Yeah. Well,
Smith
maybe,
Smith
maybe,
Smith
maybe
is
not.
one of
Yeah.
them. I mean, are
So I would
they
bring back
above
Smith.
average guys for their position? And whereas you can look at Tampa's core 12 and say every single guy on that is either least average or above average for the position that he's
I'd like to see the Oilers, like, if they're going to spend some money on a longer term deal, now that they've signed Nuge, I'd like to see them sign Larson on
in.
a reasonable deal. The I like Skinner, but even if, let's say, Skinner develops or Konovalov or one of these players, Mike Smith is old, and
Yeah,
Koskinen I don't think is the answer. So
right.
if the Oilers were to make a big move, I would like the Markstrom thing I didn't like because he's the
Hmm.
wrong age. But if it's a younger goalie who they're going to spend 4 or 5 million dollars a year on a 4 or 5 year deal,
Hmm.
that to me makes sense for the Oilers. Then you got Mike Smith and that goalie, and then after that you have that goalie and either Skinner or Konovalov or someone else. Or so that's a good plan. I don't like the idea of betting big on a forward who's heading into his 30s. You've made that bet already on Nuge. That's your bet there. Don't do it again. Don't double down on that particular strategy. Go for the short term thing. Um, and see how that works out and promote from within. That would be my take on the summer.
Well, draft some guys that are worth promoting from within who can actually grow into the roles that they have. I mean, what Tampa has done right is they've consistently come up with fabulous draft picks on the Saturday draft. And then whatever they're doing right in their farm system, I mean, you wrote a post about this, David, about all these guys in the Tampa model who spent at least one full year in their farm team. And that doesn't conclude Kucherov or Point, who moved up faster and didn't need a whole year down there, but a whole bunch of guys who did, and they gave them that time and then moved them up. That is the Detroit model.
Well, do you think the Oilers have done that, Bruce? So this is my point. Is my real point is, well, but I think they have now with
they're starting to.
And no, they haven't done it in the past, right. But are they doing it? Are we ready for that kind of transition to that sane franchise modeling now? Or are we never going to transition? Because to transition, you actually have to leave roster spots open. You can't fill it with 28, 29-year-olds. You have to say, okay.
You better sign Devon Shore right away because, you sure need another 4 left wing on top of the ones that you have that are clamoring to get into the team.
Fair enough.
That's the beef with that signing is that.
Yeah, he's more of a 13th forward, though, don't you think? But fair enough. That's a fair comment on your part.
So might Tyler Benson be if there wasn't another 28-year-old guy in his way.
Would you like to see 2 out of the 3, Benson, Rhodey, and McLeod on the team next year? Do you think that they're ready? Okay. So we're on the same page.
I don't mind the idea of the 3 of them, but I certainly think, McLeod has made his statement, and Benson has run out of waiver options, and I think there's a good chance he'll be on the team, whether they're, given a chance as line mates and so on, or whether they're just kicking around coach's decision one night, 7 minutes on the 4th line, the next night, give them a role and a consistent chance at establishing some consistency would be ideal. And I can't say I'm overly confident that that's what we're going to see.
I guess one signal will be with the expansion list. Do they protect Benson? Because there's a talk that Seattle might take Tyler Benson, possibility, and you can protect Zach Cassian or Josh Archibald, or you can protect Tyler Benson. What's your pick?
Yeah,
that'll be interesting. And it's Bruce. Nothing has happened yet. We'll end up here. It's my final comment. Nothing's happened yet. It's been one GM was telling, I can't remember who, I think it was Lawton, the Nothing Happening League, the NHL. Nothing's happening right now until expansion. Probably one of the first signals we're going to get is who the Oilers protect or not. And if they protect Benson, that's maybe a signal that they're forward thinking in terms of going down the Tampa old Detroit Red Wings style of play as opposed to chasing that shiny thing, Bruce.
Well, if Ken Holland doesn't follow the Detroit model, then I'm not sure who in the hell is going to. You'd like to think, what he's going to have to put his money where his mouth is and start making spaces for these guys to actually get the opportunity to prove themselves.
All righty. Well, let's leave it there. Bruce.
Sure. I think we've gone from pillar to post.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for talking tonight, Bruce.
All right. Thanks for listening, everyone.
And in the meantime, and in between times, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.